Hollywood never stop amazing, but these untold stories about Ann Margret will leave you speechless. A woman, and her name was Margaret. America in the 1960s and was known as the red-haired Marilyn Monroe, is now age 84, having a bad time in Hollywood again, but this time not with a smile, not with the fiery lead who used to light up the silver screen, but with a list of the 6 men she hates the most. Some of the people on that list used to be lovers and are now famous people. Others were movie directors, producers, co-stars, and men who had a drink with her on they walked the red carpet, but what did they do there? And why did Ann Margret decide to speak out now, after decades of silence? Let's look into her blacklist and find out why each name is on it. The more you watch this video, the worse Hollywood will look. She was born on April 28, 1941, in Sweden, and her name is Margaret. In the small village of Valjeban, where girls were taught to be quiet, she was born in the snow and ice. Men pleasers and obedient, but that little girl with fiery red hair and defiant eyes refused to accept what was going to happen. How it all began: her family moved to the United States when she was only 5 years old. Ann Margret went from being an immigrant girl to the hottest sex icon of the 1960s in less than 20 years. Well-known name for the redhead Marilyn Monroe. But if Monroe was the golden doll and no one could tame her wild flame. Bye Bye was her first movie in Hollywood. Birdie in 1963, and within a year, she was a movie star all over the world after starring in Viva Las Vegas with Elvis Presley. They fell deeply in love but burned each other. Like two rival lovers, that relationship left her with her first scar. Shedding light on the dark sides of Ann Margret's life under the hot red dresses and killer smiles was a series of scandals that were kept secret for decades. A hit movie made her do a naked scene against her will. Directed a lover who threatened to attack her with acid if she tried to leave him, smeared by the press as a sex doll for mafia bosses, but the pregnancy ended early at 14 weeks because of a doctor's she made an injection mistake, which the studio tried to hide in the 1970s, when many of her peers were thrown away by Hollywood like old goods and stood up as rebellious, bloody, provocative, and sexual Tommy, and especially the train robbers who threatened her life because she wouldn't do a naked scene. She broke 5 ribs when she fell off a stage in 1972, and her face was crushed. She was almost dead, but she came back in less than 6 months. Over her healing scars, she wore makeup and smiled at the people who tried to bury her. Margaret was also up for 2 Oscars, won 5 Golden Globes, and was Elvis Presley and Frank Sinatra both said in public that they wanted to marry her, but none of them were brave enough to keep their promise. She for a long time, but every light has a shadow, and her the powerful men who hurt her, destroyed her, made her depressed, and led her to drink too much. And almost killed himself today. After almost 60 years of silence, the first man she didn't like was Elvis Presley. Margaret has had enough of being quiet at age 84. No more fake smiles and no more fear of fame. She changed the list of 6 men she hates the most, and now the world is Elvis Presley was king on stage and a tyrant in love. It was time to know his first name. The first name on Margaret's list of people to avoid is Elvis Presley. The king of rock and roll and the man who made millions of women fall in love with him scream, but there was someone else standing behind the spotlight, the ghost of possession, jealousy and terrifying power. They met on the set of Viva Las Vegas in 1963. Vegas knew right away that this man could hurt her, and he did. Were very careful about what they did. They crashed into each other like 2 cars. Storms make people angry and crazy, but they are also dangerous. Loving Elvis was like holding a ticking time bomb, she said one time. He loved me, but I could never be myself around him. Elvis wasn't just envious, he was paranoid. Every time it was seen with a male co-star, even just smiling, it would make people angry. Angry people threw phones at walls, broke TVs, and tore her dresses in half. He locked the door to his hotel room one time in front of his helpers. Turned off the lights, made her kneel down, and asked, "Did you sleep with him?" And didn't say anything. Look me in the eyes and lie. That's when Elvis hit her on the cheek. She didn't get any cuts, but a break that would never heal. A clip from behind the scenes of Viva Las Vegas that was only seen by a small group of crew members is said to show Elvis shoving during an argument, and Margret slammed into a wall. A panicked cut could be heard. Asked for complete privacy and wasn't at the filming for 5 days. It's bad laryngitis for the press that they got a fake statement. The truth: she had a cut lip and a bruise on her chest. Margret tried to end the relationship, and she stayed away from Elvis. What you should know about movies: Frank Sinatra, but every attempt to avoid it led to scream-filled phone calls at midnight, threats. "If you leave me, I'll tell everyone you're a Swedish horny whore who slept with 7 Hollywood stars." Elvis did even worse. He got letters from strangers with fake naked pictures that were edited, and in fact, she told her family about rumors of high-class prostitution, which was so shocking that her mother almost had a stroke. I don't dislike Elvis Presley the performer, I dislike the person he was. Man who didn't know love, only own things, man who wanted me like a doll. She also said that she would have talked back if she hadn't left Elvis in 1965. She could have become a second Marilyn Monroe that died alone in her bed on sleeping pills in locked room where no one knew who she used to be. Elvis may have burned Margaret's The Next Man, on the other hand, hurt her family, reputation, and honor with a single word at a fancy party. The second name was so mean even because they were afraid, Hollywood kept quiet. The man's second name was Frank Sinatra. Who killed without a gun to Americans. Frank was the voice of the ideal lover: cool, rich, and famous people like presidents, the mafia, and a lot of big names in Hollywood, but to Ann Margret he was the man who ever made her want to die. They met for the first time in 1965 and his age was 25 years more than hers. But that deep velvet voice and those mesmerizing eyes drew her into a relationship that was both exciting and dangerous. And risky. I never really loved Frank, but he used their power to trick me with empty promises. In the end, he was cold in a way I had never seen any other man be. Late 1966. And Margret freaked out when she realized she was more than 3 weeks late. In fact, Frank Sinatra was the father of her child. Sinatra sent her a non-disclosure agreement instead of happiness. A friendship that went bad to a private doctor who was doing illegal abortions on starlets at the time. I begged him, I can take care of the baby by myself, I don't need your money. Please don't make me do this. He got up, took a drag on his cigarette, looked down at me, and said, if you don't, I'll make Hollywood think you're a Swedish hooker who slept her way to every part. She had the abortion. In fear and shame in a dark room with no lights, she was dropped from a new project with Sinatra a few months later, just as she was about to start filming it. A week before the start of production, for no reason but to warn the director, refused to say anything. Later, an FBI source gave a hint that Sinatra had made up a file that falsely said it had sexual ties with mafia bosses in exchange for roles, and that this file got out by accident 2 different studios. Overnight, I went from being an A-list actress to someone that no one dared touch. The press called me, and the asset the Chicago Mafia's sex slave. My mom passed out when she read the headline. At dinner, and Margret once thought about suing Sinatra. But in the 1960s and 1970s, no one could get close to him. He was a close friend of President Kennedy. The leader of the Rat Pack and the king of show business. Frank didn't need anyone who was against him to be on the artistic map. A gun to kill me. He killed me with power and fame. Whispered around the clean dinner tables, and no one believed me. They only believed that voice. Frank didn't hit me or rape me, they thought. Did something even worse, he turned everyone's back on me. Then watched me slowly die on the inside from drug abuse, depression, and a falling apart. It took her more than 7 years to get back on screen. But even after everything, she still remembers the one phone call from Frank years later, not the big moment. don't forget where you are. Now, do you see Elvis getting hit with fists? Sinatra beat them with strength, but the third man was the most dangerous of all, a predator, a sex offender, and the owner of the tapes that kept Ann up at night. Margret for all of her days. The third name was James Woods, the voyeur and the perverted smile behind the camera. Not all people have heard of the movie. The Hunted Desire is a dark and strange movie project that began in the middle of 1979 and abruptly called off 10 days into filming. The director disappeared. No one in the business dared to talk about it after the producer went silent. And the reason: a man named James Woods. People know him as a smart, sharp actor who is often praised for playing smart and dangerous bad guys. Margret saw a very different face. It was disgusting and silent. Like when I was younger, I thought Elvis and Sinatra were my worst nightmares. But they're not. I could feel James Woods's shadow following me around every time I changed clothes. By day 3 on set, she was getting antsy, and James's eyes moved over her body like a bloody blade. It wasn't anger or threats, it was twisted, cold lust. By day 7, she knew something was very wrong. A lighting technician who had been fired a few days before secretly went up to she had a VHS tape with footage of Ann Margret changing on it. Secretly filmed her taking off her clothes, taking off her bra, bending down to wipe her sweat. That video made every woman shake. It wasn't just my body that was shown, it was my honor, my privacy, and my soul were all taken away by a sick voyeur. When Ann spoke to the director, he just bowed his head and said sorry. She finally found out that James Woods had put at least 3 tiny cameras in the women's changing room. One was in the bathroom and the other was in Ann's personal trailer. The whole crew was shocked. But instead of going public, the producers paid money to keep the movie quiet, shut it down, and put out a fake statement saying that James Woods was never sued, arrested, or named because he didn't have enough money. Still today, not a single story about the event has been reported in the news. I don't just dislike James Woods, I fear him. I've met control freaks who were hungry for power. Men, but Woods was a monster. He didn't need to hit or scream. I would never be able to look at her again for 40 years. Margret also went to see a lawyer. But the advice she got made it very clear: Hollywood doesn't need another scandal. Say nothing if you want to stay in business, and she hasn't said anything since. The next part is full of blood. There was a fake accident that almost killed someone on set, and Hollywood said don't turn away, what's coming next will chill you. Getting to the heart of the cruelty that was hidden by the studio lights. The fourth name is Sam Peckinpah, and he is in charge of explosions, blood, and deep-seated dislike for women. If James Woods abused her body in front of hidden cameras, then Sam Peckinpah, the famous director of blood-soaked Western, used the whole set of the movie to punish Ann Margret for no reason. She wouldn't take off her clothes. I've never seen anyone hate women so much. And I never thought I'd leave that set with my face still whole. Ann Margret was cast as the lead in the Western action movie The Train Robbers in 1972. Directed by Sam Peckinpah, who is known for being violent and drinking a lot. Disliked all things sweet from the start. And take off the dress if you want to be a real Western woman. Took off the mask and that wet Hollywood starlet look and refused after that. Every scene she filmed was a silent way for her to hurt herself. It finally broke on day 19 of filming. The script called for Ann to run away from an explosion, a staged effect that was supposed to be safe, but after the cameras stopped rolling, she felt real heat hit her face. The explosion was too big to be fake. It burned part of her dress while it was still on her body and let out a scream. On set with second-degree burns on her thigh and hip and smoke still in her mouth, the fire department rushed and the director smiled and said, "Oops, I guess I used the real explosives by accident," he said. But she lived, right, good, and asked for an investigation. The producers tried to avoid taking responsibility. Putting the blame on the tech team, the director kept filming, drank, and even told the press, "And Margret is just an actress who can't take the hurt like a real star." Marilyn Monroe would have ended the scene and then killed herself. Later, an assistant told them that Peckinpah had ordered live bombs to teach that woman a lesson. I hate him not because he burned me, but because he want me to burn. I hate him because I couldn't take on another action role for years afterward. I hate him because he made me look like a walking ghost on set. I'm not as sure of myself or brave as I used to be. Margret fell into a deep depression after what happened and had to go through physical therapy for almost 9 months. When she went back to the screen, though, she still smiled, even though burn scars were hiding them. Putting on makeup and hiding a spirit that wasn't carefree anymore. Brace yourself, the next story isn't about an accident, it's about fights in a hotel. A room with only 2 people and a scar that will never go away. The 5th name is Steve McQueen, the male icon and abusive partner. Steve McQueen was the king of cool and the perfect example of a tough man. The man who made Hollywood stare and scream for freedom. A lot of women fall in love with him, but to Ann Margret, he wasn't a lover. Was a dangerous storm wrapped in leather, holding a fist and a smile. It was dangerous to love Steve McQueen because he was so charming. You were smart and gentle, but one wrong move and you were no longer yourself. They met at a party in Bel Air in 1970. She was very famous at the time. Steve and carnal knowledge had just ended a bad marriage. When their loneliness hit, it was like a beautiful explosion that rotted them from the inside out. After only 3 months, Steve told her to stop acting in movies with sex scenes. In one case, when she agreed to kiss in another project, he smashed a wine bottle against the hotel wall. Threw her script into the pool. He told me, if you want to kiss if you want to sleep with all of Hollywood's men, play them on screen. The worst night was March 14, 1971. They got into a heated argument afterward and didn't show up to a dinner with Steve's friends. New friends, he said. I made him look bad, so I pushed back. I was no longer standing in an instant. She hit her head on a steel railing when McQueen punched her hard in the chest. Then he grabbed her by the hair, dragged her into the yacht cabin, and threw her hard against the wall. An ex-motorcycle mechanic. The result: 2 broken ribs and a broken left jawbone. Her back and hips were badly bruised, and she was rushed to the hospital in shock. But when asked what happened, I knew that if I told the truth, she'd catch me, so I just said, I slipped, kill him instead of him. I used to love Steve. Thought my love could heal the beast in him, but love can't change a man who doesn't want to change. And hell is when love turns into fear. After that night, she cut off all. Steve tried to get in touch with her several times and even showed up at her movie without telling her set, but she told security they wouldn't meet and they never looked back. The last man didn't have a name or a face, but he made Ann Margret very scared. It was in all of her nightmares. The 6th name was the Nameless Man. The producer who broke the hearts of women. Doesn't every monster have a Wikipedia page? There are predators who hide behind fancy offices and don't stand out in front of the camera. There were champagne glasses, million-dollar handshakes, and strings being pulled out of the shadows. She calls him the Nameless Man, and he was a powerful producer in the 1960s. Many million-dollar deals with big studios, but no one knew his face. No one dared say his name, but every actress who went into his office left in a creepy silence. And only 23 when she met him. They were at MGM to talk about a big deal. Film called The Golden Cage, but he didn't read from a script. Instead, he laid out the scenes. A bunch of pictures on the table, naked pictures, fuzzy, but I knew it was in. I froze. That was not my picture, but the face and body were mine. He made a drink and lit a cigar. It looked so real it scared him. He spoke in a snake-like voice and said, "If you turn down this role, these photos will end up on the column in the middle of Penthouse next week." He stood up to leave, but his hand was locked. The door. Don't forget that I don't need to do anything. That picture has never been seen by the public, but I have to say something and you'll lose everything." They were quietly passed around among male actors, directors, and producers. And once found a copy in the dressing room of a famous director, tucked away in his notebook while he was casting notes. I don't know who still has them, but I know I was ripped apart and in pain. Put back together like a toy by strong men. No beatings. He was the most dangerous because there were no cameras or blood. Of them all, Ann was never hit, but every time she opened a script, she had to think, was I cast because of my skills or because I kept quiet for someone years ago? I used to think I got where I am now by working hard and luck. But now I'm not sure how I did it. A lot of those steps were made through pain, tears, and long hours of hard work. I'm 84 years old now, so I don't need another part, and I don't worry about being taken off the walk of fame. Fame, I made my name with real scars and real pain, and no one can take that away.